Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we are honored to have Major Mark Flynn with Maryland Department of Public Safety K9 Unit for this webinar, and he is going to lay out why canines belong in corrections departments. Oftentimes when we are trying to establish new programs, we run into roadblocks, and his presentation will explain why they are beneficial and why they are a must-have. So I'm going to turn it over to Major Flynn at this time.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for having me. I'm very passionate about this subject because I started in K9 a long, long time ago in the military. But I really do believe that canines are the best investment that any administrator, warden, superintendent, or department head can make in the safety and security of their institutions. Can you hit the first slide?
All right.
So today we're going to cover why canines are your best investment, why we do what we do, the violence and crime associated with contraband, the value of single purpose, or what we call floppy-eared dogs, signage and implied consent on institutions and correctional environments, CDS and contraband trends, trafficking trends, the use of patrol dogs, which is controversial in some locations, and starting, expanding, or growing a canine unit. You want me to tell you next slide as we go?
Yeah.
Okay, next slide.
All right.
So this is me while I'm on the job. I was a little slimmer back then, but anyway, good looking dude.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm Major Mark Flynn. I'm with the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services K9 Unit. Next slide. I was in the military police for 11 years. That's where I found the canine world. This is Bruno on the left. That was the Philippines. And on the right is Duke, my first patrol dog. That was in Turkey. I learned the basics of how to run patrol dogs in both those facilities. Next slide. This is two dogs that I worked behind the fence. Briar on the left was a drug dog, and on the right was Shadow. He was a patrol dog. More on Shadow later because Shadow was a rescue that we were able to turn into a patrol dog, thereby saving a lot of money for our program. I'll talk more about that later. Both dogs were super dogs. The Springer Spaniel on the left-hand side was probably the best drug dog that I've handled in a 42-year career. That's correct. 42 years, which officially makes me an old fart. Next. This is the unit that I belong to, the Maryland DPSCS K9 unit. We have 72 dogs split among 36 handlers and 6 supervisors with a trainer. As you can see, we're a very diverse unit. We're all over the state of Maryland, and our beat is anywhere where there's a correctional environment or facility. Next slide. The unit is comprised of the handlers, 6 supervisors, 1 full-time trainer, and 2 assistant trainers. The reason we have 69 single-purpose and 2 dual-certified dogs is because all of our handlers have 2 dogs. We have 1 dog that works for detector work, and we'll talk more about that later. And we have 1 dog that works patrol work exclusively. We do have a couple of dual-purpose dogs, but they are bomb/gun detecting dogs, which, again, we'll talk about later. We operate in 5 regional offices, and we serve 28 correctional facilities all over the state of Maryland. Next. So we churn out our own classes. We do our own training. Each class, detector or patrol, is between 12 and 15 weeks. This is a joint class. There's multiple departments represented here. We have DC, PG, some of the local sheriffs, and of course my own department to graduate in this particular class, but each class is made up of multiple jurisdictions. We are the biggest training unit and organization in the state. Anybody who can't afford a school, we will let them train with us free of charge. Our program has been running this way since 1996, and we've trained probably well over 2,000 or 3,000 handlers that have went out in the field. Next. So our people do have police powers. We go to a special police academy and graduate so that we're able to effect arrests. But we didn't always. This is a recent development in the last 7 or 8 years. Before that, all of our handlers are certified correctional officers first. They are chosen from the correctional environment as correctional officers. They come to us through a process of interviews and other tests and so on in order for us to pick them. Once they're chosen for K9, we send them to a K9 police academy and a regular K9 academy as well. And then they become fully operational. We train them for the first year as an OJT, on the job training under the auspices of a senior K9 handler. Next. So why K9? That's a big question that a lot of administrators and wardens, especially in today's times where the budgets are getting tight and money is scarce. Why should any corrections department devote valuable time, money, and their resources to a K9 program? Next. Canines are a force multiplier for safety. And it's not just the safety of the correctional officers, although that is a primary responsibility, but it makes our institutions safer for prisoners, administrators, staff, and the general public as a whole. There is no other resource that has as an immediate an impact on what inmates do inside as the K9 unit. The K9s provide internal and street level arrests, investigations, and convictions over what they can do in the institutions. The K9s help keep the bad guys locked up longer. When they're charged with street crimes for the contraband, the drugs, and the weapons that they have, they stay longer in our facilities and keep the streets safer. K9s put more bad guys away than any other program you're going to have in your institutions. The K9 officers, they rescue other correctional officers who are in trouble by responding inside with a patrol dog to handle riots, insurrections, officer down calls. There is nothing better than a patrol dog coming on a tier or in an exercise yard to squash these rebellions. Next. Removing contraband would be enough if that's all that K9 did, but they do much more than that. The contraband and the violence go hand in hand. That is not my opinion. That's a determination made by the Supreme Court. Contraband in your institutions funds your street gangs, and it makes your gangs much, much harder to deal with and way more powerful. Staff corruption is almost always centered around contraband. Contraband in your institutions, your assaults will increase. Inmates that are intoxicated on drugs and alcohol are much more likely to assault other inmates and our staff. And contraband in your institutions, it keeps the criminals active. They're just running the same games they play on the streets inside of your institutions. Next. The more drugs and contraband that you remove from your facilities, the safer your institutions become. Next. Dogs can find it all. They're not just drug dogs anymore. We find contraband of all kinds. Our dogs can find cell phones, hard drives, thumb drives, tobacco, alcohol, drugs, weapons of all kinds that have been around those drugs also acquire those odors. So we recover hundreds of weapons every single year. If it has an odor, you can train a dog to find it, and we do. Next. We find stuff in the mail all the time. Contraband can be found by the dogs in your mail. And believe me, if you have real mail coming into your institutions and not copied format, and many institutions still do that, we do here in Maryland, your cards and letters are loaded with contraband, and the dogs are one of the only devices that can successfully find it. Next. Legal mail. Even if you're photocopying and sending your mail in, more than likely you are allowing legal mail in because of constitutional reasons. That legal mail, we estimate that 60% of our legal mail is fake or false, and it contains contraband, just like here. You can see the Suboxone hidden inside what was supposedly legal mail. Next. In your exercise yards, they're throwing it over the fence in balls. Your correctional officers, your rec officers are seeing these balls. They'll walk right by it. Dogs won't. By the way, every picture you're seeing was a find by one of our canines. Next. In the ceilings, right in the middle of that picture, she's hard to see, but that is Giselle, the English Springer Spaniel. And in those humongous bags was Jump Steady. Other people call it Pruno, homemade alcohol. She found and confiscated all of the stuff hidden in the ceiling of a rec center. That is enough alcohol to get the entire institution drunk. And here's another safety issue. The alcohol they're making, a lot of times they don't skim or separate the two types of alcohol. One is poisonous. And during COVID, that alcohol was actually killing our inmates. They were overdosing on it. We trained Giselle on how to find alcohol. Her and 6 other dogs, they had an immediate effect, finding alcohol all over the institutions, hidden everywhere you could. Next. One of the only things that helps you with your staff entry into your facilities are the dogs. That we find contraband on staff, unfortunately, quite a bit. This stash right here was in a correctional officer's boots. She had tobacco, she had K2, she had OxyContin, all in her own shoes. Next. The dogs find contraband in inmate or staff lunch bags. This contraband here was K2 on the right, tobacco on the left, cell phones, as well as Suboxone. All of this was in a staff member's lunch bag, hidden underneath spaghetti. And yes, the dog would be the only possible resource that could find that stash. Next. On your staff in general, they're just carrying this stuff in. It'll get through a metal detector. It will not get through a dog. Next. This is in your staff. There is no other device out there, no electronic device, no scanning technology that's going to find this contraband inside of your staff. These were 2 condoms full of drugs that we found inside of one of our correctional officers. The VDS is the vaginal delivery system. Unfortunately, it's used quite a bit. Next. There's also, not to be confused with the RDS, the rectal delivery system, which can be used by either gender. This was all recovered also from staff. As you can see, it was drugs, lighters, different things that the inmates wanted. Next. In your visitors, if you have full contact visitors, you have contraband coming in. This was recovered in this visitor's mouth. The different colored balloons indicated what it was so the inmates could break it up, distribute it out without having to open each and every one of them. The white was heroin, the yellow was tobacco, the green was K2, and the orange one was Suboxone. Allowed them to color code it. Again, on a visitor. Inside your inmates. This is a cell phone that was detected inside of an inmate by one of our dogs, okay? The record we ever recovered from one inmate was 5 cell phones plus chargers. That inmate was a little uncomfortable. Packages. If you have packages coming into your institution, I guarantee you it is a major venue for contraband. And the dogs are unlike any other scanning device. Even people miss these things. The dogs will not. This is a made package, a false bottom that was made. You can see that the dice held up the contraband, created a false bottom. If you looked in it, you would not see anything different. Only a dog could have detected this. That's tobacco, K2, marijuana, Suboxone. you name it, it was in this particular package. Next. Drone drops. If you don't have a drone issue yet, you will eventually. You might already have it and not know it. They drop at night. Drone drops into your exercise yards and your common areas where the inmates can go. Also on the exterior of the prisons where your trustees and your work release guys can get to it. They break it up and they bring it inside your institutions. When they drop these in the dark, no staff member is going to be able to find it, but our dogs can. Next. In our segregation units. So in our segregation unit, we had a major problem with overdoses. We couldn't figure out where it was coming in, or they couldn't figure it out. Once they brought the dogs in, we figured it out pretty quick. It was being brought in right in front of their eyes by their kitchen workers. That salt and pepper on the left-hand side had been treated with K2 that had been sprayed on that, as well as inmate letters and cards from home. As you can see, the orange color on the cartoons or on the coloring books was all Suboxone. Dogs detected this. Next. And what happens if we miss this contraband? If you don't have dogs working your institutions, you will miss most of this contraband. And if you do miss it, your staff and assaults will increase. I guarantee it. Next. This officer was stabbed in the neck by an inmate who jumped his cuffs. Again, he was high as a kite when he did this on contraband and drugs that had gotten into our segregation unit. The two nurses did treat him and he did live, but it was a close one. Next. This is a captain. She was attacked. Both of her eye sockets were broken. She was also attacked by an inmate who was high at the time. She did nothing wrong. She simply was in the wrong place at the wrong time with an inmate who was intoxicated and was hard to manage and bent on violence. Next. Punched and kicked. Both of these officers lost time from work. The lady on the right never came back to work. She was actually in a coma at the time this was taken. Again, beaten over contraband and drugs. This is a CO who was slashed with a knife as he was trying to recover contraband from an inmate. Again, if you don't have dogs present in your institution, there's a really good chance you're missing most of this contraband that's causing this kind of violence. Next. This officer had his 2 fingers bitten off trying to recover drugs from an inmate's mouth. As you can see, one of them was reattached, the other one was not. The inmate actually swallowed the finger, the end of that finger, we believe, just to spite him so he couldn't get it back and have it reattached. That officer never returned to full duty. Again, contraband, drugs. There's gang activity increases when you have contraband in your facilities. We know this, right? We also know that gangs in prison are one of the worst movers of contraband and drugs. There's 52 active gangs across the nation in prison systems and 6 nationally recognized gangs. One of the worst we have in Maryland is the Black Guerrilla family, and with them is Dead Men Inc. Next. This is the logo for both of them. One of the big differences between these two gangs is the Black Guerrilla family obviously is all black inmates. Dead Men Inc. was interesting because it was formed as an extension of BGF, but it allowed white members so that they can perform hits all over the system. Their biggest claim to fame, though, is that the Black Guerrilla family in Maryland, at least, controls all of the drugs coming in and out of the institutions, and Dead Men Inc. is their enforcement arm. Next. This was a fight over contraband. The inmate was stabbed up pretty badly. He lived. Next. This was an informant. That is not the normal shape of his head. He was locked and socked. As people are aware, they will take a sock or a piece of clothing. They'll put something very heavy in it, either a combination lock or rocks from the exercise yard, and they will use it as a flail and beat other inmates. This gentleman had informed a CO about where some contraband was, and this was the retribution. He was put into PC, but he almost lost his right eye. Next. This was a gang hit, and it went very, very badly for this gentleman. Although the blood was proficient, it wasn't a kill shot. He definitely did live. A member of the Crips. Next. This gentleman didn't pay his bills for contraband and drugs, and as you can see, he's got multiple stab wounds all over his arms and chest. He fought off his attackers and lived. But he did. But obviously, it was because of his contraband bill. Next. This was a gang hit. This man was eviscerated. That's his own intestines coming out through his stomach. He obviously was dealing in the contraband trade. Again, all of this violence can be avoided if we get this contraband out of the system, and your best resource for doing that are the dogs. Next. This gentleman was also hit by a lock in the sock. If you look at the top of his scalp, you can see that it was completely open from above his right eye all the way to the back. You could actually see the bone through that. He did live. This gentleman was given a $1.50. He was a part of the Aryan Brotherhood. A $1.50 is an inmate way of sending a message that this person is a snitch or works with the police. $1.50 is called that because that wound takes about 150 stitches to close. It's done very, very brutally. Inmates come up from behind. They push the head forward while they pull the blade back. They'll grab the back of the shirt or hair. This is why a lot of the skinheads are short-haired, because they know they will lose it in a fight. Also, if some of your black inmates shave their heads for the same exact reason, the hair is a liability in a fight. This gentleman did live, but obviously the stitching on his face was extensive. Next. This guy was not a $1.50. This guy wanted out of a gang. He had checked himself in, but they got to him anyway. They were trying to kill him. As you can see through that wound, you can actually see arteries. He did live, but it was a close one for him. Next. Another $1.50. This was DMI, Dead Men Inc. He was short on a drug supply. He had tried to give to another person, and this was the result. It's hard to see, but they had carved the outside in his nose. The nostrils between his two noses had also been cut in half. Next. This gentleman was stabbed in the eye and lost his eye, although he did live. He owed money on drugs and contraband, and he did not pay his debt. And they took this revenge on him. Next. This gentleman was slashed during a gang fight over territory and gang rights to drugs and contraband. As you can see, they had gotten a razor into the institution. That is not a shank or a homemade knife. That is a street knife. And street knives in prison are super dangerous. Again, contraband that can be eradicated if we stop the flow in. K9's your best resource for doing that. Next. This gentleman did not make it. He was definitely killed over drugs and contraband. As you can see, it takes a toll, and that toll is very, very serious for the safety of your institutions. Next. This was Aryan Brotherhood, AB on AB for a drug debt. As you can see, there's a ginormous hole underneath the guy's left ear, and you can see all the way into the spinal cord. This guy lived. It's amazing to me that inmates have this will to live even when they're doing life. This guy was in a maximum security facility doing life, and that was done with a homemade knife. Next. This is a gang hit. He moved into an area he wasn't supposed to move in. They got him in the weight area in the exercise yard. His own gang members, his own task force, faded away and allowed the hit to happen. He was bench pressing some weight. They came up and they used weight plates on his head. He did not make it. Next. It gets personal for me. Both of these officers were killed in the Maryland system. Jeffrey Roten on the left, I knew personally. Officer David McGuinn had actually applied to be a canine handler, was going through the process. The reason we really liked him was he was a contraband hunter. Inside the institution as a correctional officer, he was really, really good at finding contraband. As a matter of fact, his nickname on the tiers by the inmates was Homeland Security. They said it condescendingly, but he loved it. He was really, really good at getting drugs and contraband out of the prison. He was attacked one night trying to do count at 10 p.m. at night, final count for the second shift. They jumped on his back in an old prison where they were able to jimmy the locks open, and they stabbed him. His vest protected him for a little while, but when he was trying to run off the tier, one of the inmates got a shot in on his neck, and unfortunately he bled out and died. At the trial, we got all three inmates that were involved. At his trial, one of the inmates said in open court that he had been hired to kill McGuinn by a person who did not like him stepping on the contraband of drugs that were coming in the institution. He also identified that person as being a fellow correctional officer. So the drugs and the contraband coming in, obviously this man's lost his life over it, and that can be stopped. Next. So I would like you to rethink K9. Sometimes people think of K9s as the one on the left, which is a patrol dog. And patrol dogs are needed and necessary. There's no doubt about it. But that little black lab to the right is going to make your institutions 100 times more safe because of what he can do. Unfortunately, this dog decided to get as close to the 8 as possible. He jumped up in the locker, which is cute. It's a training issue. We worked through that. But as you can see, by the box that was magnetic box on the inside of the locker, he was right on the source. He just wanted to get as close to the source as he possibly could. That's what we trained them to do. The handler had some issues with leash control. But either way, I want you to rethink K9. They're not these vicious dogs that cause liabilities and issues. We use lots of floppy-eared dogs who are awesome at finding and detecting your contraband, your K9, and will make your institutions safer. Next. These K9s only bite in court, which makes them less of a liability for any administrators or wardens. These are 2 Springer Spaniels, my personal favorite breed to train for this work, and I've been training dogs for 42 years. These are my two favorite. This is my favorite breed to work with. We have the one on the left that's doing cell phone. The one on the right is working drugs. But they can be trained to find any odor in any location. And like I said, the only place they'll bite is in court. My dog, Springer Spaniel that I had for 11 years, every night he would come home and steal the covers off my little girl's bed. That's how vicious he was. But in court, he bit deep. No doubt about it. Next. It's all in how you train and deploy your canine department. Okay, we are a centralized unit in Maryland, so all the canine handlers work for a centralized operational unit. Therefore, they're deployed out to the institutions where the need is, and usually generated by intel or urinalysis rates or drug rates or violence rates. We send the dogs out to the institutions that need them the most, and I can tell you that when you deploy dogs in that manner and not just sitting around waiting for the next person to come in on a visit or whatever, it's much more effective. These directed searches are always productive. Next. The value of passive alert single-purpose dogs with people scans. And by single-purpose, I mean our detector dogs are trained to find only drugs. They're not cross-trained into patrol work. In police world, dogs are often trained in 2 different disciplines. One is patrol, German Shepherd, Belgian Malinois, Rottweilers, and that patrol is biting and controlling suspects. And then the second discipline is finding some kind of substance. We break it into 2 different disciplines. One dog specializes in patrol, and the floppy-eared dogs, single-purpose dogs, find contraband, drugs, and anything that's not supposed to be in that prison system that makes it unsafe. These passive alert dogs working your institutions, in your visiting rooms, in your staff scanning areas, all of these areas that are even on the perimeter, they're a psychological deterrent. As soon as your dirty staff, your visitors, whoever is trying to bring this contraband in, as soon as they see that canine logo or a canine walking the perimeter or a canine vehicle, they think twice about bringing it in. And they're always thinking in the future, is there a dog on duty? Also, when you interdict these substances before they're introduced in the parking lots, on the roads coming in, you have a much better chance of getting the drugs and contraband before it's dispersed. In the visiting rooms, in the exercise yards, unfortunately, and we've all seen it being in corrections for a while, that contraband is broken up and distributed like lightning. You've never seen anything move so quick. So that's one of the big things about the passive alert dogs. Another one is support staff in the visiting reception rooms. When we're in those VCRs or VRCs, whatever you call that area where visitors register to see their loved ones, those dogs are huge value items in there. These dogs, these passive alert dogs, can be touched. We highly recommend that you allow children and visitors and even staff to pet the dogs when they're not working, because it creates this environment where people are not afraid of the dogs. Many of these children who are coming to visit their parents, they come from high crime areas where the only dogs they see are dogs used to guard drug stashes and aggressive dogs that bite people. And they are legitimately terrified of the dogs, even the small little fluffy ones that we use. So the value of them being able to pet them and talk to them puts them at ease, allows the whole family to be scanned prior to a visit. And again, you get an opportunity to get contraband and drugs out of your institutions. Also, publicity for your program. We get request after request after request to do demonstrations of our dog's abilities at things such as National Night Out, PTA meetings, back to school events, you name it. And we honor all of them because we want people to know what we're doing. We want people to be able to interact with these dogs. And the passive alert, single purpose, floppy-eared dogs, you can do that with all of them. Next. We do people scans. Some institutions do not do this, but I can tell you that by law, you are allowed to do them. And people scans are invaluable. We scan visitors and staff and you name it, and we do it in this manner. The dog walks around the people as long as the nose is not intrusive. In other words, if the nose is intrusive on the body, that is prohibited. However, the dog can scan the air around people legally, and even incidental contact is allowed under the prescribed laws of the Supreme Court and district courts have ruled over the years. Next. This is the legal issue that it's quoted under. German Shepherds are prohibited, and they're named as German Shepherds inside the legal documents. And the reason that is because they have a nature of being aggressive. So it's harrowing, it's dangerous, it's scary for people. But the floppy-eared dogs, they get around this law. And as a matter of fact, they are cleared to go and good to go for people scans because of these legal cases. Next. We also use consent, implied consent, and verbal and written consent. It's one of the biggest tools that we have. When people drive onto state property, it's like driving onto a military base. You are giving your implied consent to come onto a base or into a correctional facility. You're giving your consent to be scanned and searched. We also use verbal consent. We ask people, sit down. Are you okay with being scanned by the dogs? 99.9% of the people say yes. And if we suspect that somebody does have contraband, we oftentimes ask for a written consent form. And surprisingly, about 99% of the people that we do a written consent of, that we find drugs on, still sign the form because they want to visit their inmates and they think that the dogs will miss it. They don't. Next. We also use signage. It's our friend. Every institution we have in the state of Maryland has signs very similar to this. Once people drive by these signs to enter the property, they have given their implied consent. And that's an official legal position held by district courts all the way up to the Supreme Court. Next. This is the written consent form that we use. Like I said, 99% of the people sign it even when they have contraband on them. Next. Canines also play well with others. We work with our criminal intelligence units. Every institution has them. They come by different names, but working with these institution, intel, investigative bodies, it is a life-changing event. When those units work together for the good of the unit, you get much more contraband drugs out. It's much easier to use your intel and search a single cell as opposed to an entire cell block. So it's a win-win for everybody. And canines, units who do play well with others, find success for everybody involved. And by the way, your intel people have an arm that can actually enforce what they're doing. And if you treat them well and you give them the credit that they're due, they will continue to work with K9 in a very beneficial way. Next. Reduce your overhead. I understand that K9 can be a costly venture, but as I said earlier, there is no dollar spent in corrections that has a more direct and immediate effect on safety and security as dogs. And in our unit, we have 72 dogs. Out of the 72, approximately 35 were either from rescues or other donated dogs. The rescues, the shelters. We have relationships with all of them. They will call us if they have a hard to place dog. The dogs that we get from these shelters are the ones that people don't want as pets. They're high energy, high drive. These are the ones that are chewing up your carpet, running around your house with the zoomies, and tearing the pockets off your pants to get a ball or a toy or a treat out of it. These dogs are basically a pain in the butt for people because they need a job, and we give them that job. We have literally saved the state of Maryland hundreds of thousands of dollars in training and cost by not purchasing dogs, but by finding these rescues that were willing to work with us. And we even go through the shelters and the animal shelters and the pounds looking for dogs that meet the criteria. We test them out. We field test them. We bring them into our program. We train them ourselves, which again saves a lot of money, but you need the expertise of people to be able to train these dogs. And then after 16 weeks, they're in the field. And these dogs are amazing. And like I told you earlier about Shadow, my patrol dog, that dog worked in our system, saved my bacon more than once, responded into numerous riots, insurrections, never had a problem, was always on point, and saved many an officer. And we got that dog from a shelter 3 days before he was supposed to be euthanized for biting somebody earlier. So these dogs just need jobs. And if you have a good, competent program and good canine officers, they can find these dogs for you and save you a lot of money. Next. This is allied agencies can also help you out. There's a lot of departments that just give up dogs. Either the handler rotates out or we got a bunch of dogs in recently from states who they legalized marijuana. Well, marijuana is still illegal inside of a prison system. So those dogs are perfectly acceptable for us to use. This dog right here, this is Alba. She worked till she was 15 years old. She's an undersized Belgian Malinois and was one of the first in the country to be able to find cell phones. She's an amazing dog, absolutely non-aggressive. She weighed about 30 pounds, so not a lot of departments would use her for a patrol dog. And the reason she washed out of U.S. Customs was she wouldn't walk on a treadmill, which was part of their environmental testing program for their dogs. We had a good relationship with them. They donated the dog to us free of charge. She was one of our beasts. This dog recovered more cell phones and more contraband than any other dog in the history of our department. She is a superstar. Matter of fact, we tried to retire her 3 separate times when she turned 10, 12, and 14, and she wouldn't have it. She was at home driving her handler insane. We brought her back to work. She worked for another year, and then at 15, she passed peacefully into sleep with her ball in her mouth. Great dog, and also didn't cost our department a dime. Next. Cell phone detection is huge. You are not going to find a machine that can do what a dog does. I'm asked all the time, how does a dog detect cell phones or other electronic devices? It's actually very simple. It's a composite smell. We'll get into it in a little bit. But the truth is that cell phones inside of your institutions are more dangerous than any other contraband. That's not my opinion. That's a fact. With cell phones, they can do hits. They can arrange drops of contraband. They can even take pictures of your staff and your correctional officers. And if they're close enough to the parking lot, even the license plates of the vehicles your staff is driving, and they will send it out. Without question, cell phones are the most dangerous contraband that we find and we remove hundreds of cell phones every single year. Next. This is just a small example of what we got in one little stash. Cell phones are legendary for coming into our institutions. With the communications not monitored, the inmates are happy, and we are not, because they are doing their nefarious criminal activities inside of our institutions, making them highly unsafe for everybody. Next. Electronic storage detection also is a big deal. We do train our dogs on ESD, which is thumb drives and what have you. Inmates use these for pornography and music and movies, and they sell them to each other, and they do collect debts from each other, and unfortunately, they do clog up our system. But our cell phone dogs are able to determine both the cell phone odor and the ESD odor with no problems. And it's just, if it has an odor, you can train a dog to find it. Next. So I'm always asked, well, how do you train a dog to find electronic products? I mean, what is going on there? It's not really so mysterious. By the way, this is a Giordano's pizza. Those are my 3 kids. And we were enjoying that pizza. By the way, if you haven't been to Chicago and you don't know Lou Malnati or Giordano's or Geno's, which I also like Geno's, look at me. You know I like pizza. Look, if you haven't been there, you need to. But it's very similar to this, okay? When we as human beings walk into a pizza parlor, it smells delicious, but it smells like pizza to us. When a dog walks into a pizza parlor, if he was able to, he would be able to smell the crust, the tomato sauce, the cheese, the pepperoni, the pan, the oil on the pan, and even if the hands of the worker was washed when he used the restroom before he made your pizza. That's how good dogs smell. And when they take that smell, they put it all together to make the composite smell. The cheese, the crust, the tomato sauce, the pan, all of it becomes a cell phone smell to a dog. Take any one of the components out, it's no longer the same picture. So they'll walk by a PlayStation to find the cell phone. They'll walk by a VCR if they still sold those to get the cell phone. It's the composite smell that we teach them, and it's the same for the thumb drives and the hard drives and the other electronic products. Next. So this is your books coming in your institution. They're going to have this kind of contraband in them too. We get our books, our packages, all that material we get coming in. This was 19 flash drives and Suboxone strips in the spine of a book. Very common way for drugs to come in. Next. These are some of the trends we're going to go through right now. This is Suboxone in its native form. It's a sublingual strip. Obviously, Suboxone is provided to people on the street in order to decrease the cravings for heroin. It's replaced methadone in most clinics now because it's easier to give out. Also, methadone was the most abused drug in the system because people were using it to get that heroin-like high. They came up with Suboxone, which was going to be foolproof. It wasn't able to be abused. And of course, it has now become our most abused drug in the system. Same song, just a different person playing it. On the left is a card with a girl's picture. It went to her daddy, says Hello Kitty, and it was loaded with all the Suboxone in it. Your mail is loaded with contraband, and the only way you're going to find it is with K9's help. Next. Like I said, the most abused system. Next. This is what a strip looks like, and see how small it is. They can stack 50, 60, 70 of these up, and it still only occupies a domino size. So because of its concealability and the ability to hide it on the human body, dog detectors are really the only foolproof method to find this stuff. And yes, our dogs knock down a ton of Suboxone coming into our institutions. Next. K2, K3 spice and the synthetic cannabinoids, we're seeing more and more of these, and this causes psychotic episodes in your inmates. Oftentimes it looks like potpourri or marijuana. Unfortunately, they're liquefying these drugs, and I'm going to tell you about that in a few minutes. Dogs, we do train our dogs on these synthetic cannabinoids, and we get a very, very good result. Next. This is one of the most dangerous trends that we are seeing in our institutions. They spray the drugs, they liquefy them. They can liquefy anything. PCP, TCP, heroin, spice, K2, K3. They liquefy it, they spray it on paper, and it gets right through your system, either with your legal mail, in packages, or in your regular mail. Next. I want to tell you how important it is to get this mail. On the picture on the right with the squares, that is a full 8x11 piece of paper, okay? They break it down into these little pieces. Each little piece goes anywhere from $25 to $100, depending on what institution they're in. That one piece of paper in one of our institutions can go as high as $9,350 for that one piece of paper that's been sprayed with either Suboxone, K2, or K3. It is extremely lucrative. They don't mind sending hundreds of pieces of paper in with the hopes of getting even one or two in. And if they do that, they're going to make a lot of money, and they do. By the way, with Suboxone that our state pays for. Here's another way they're getting it in. They're spraying it on these letters and cards that are coming in. A lot of times it's a plant. It comes in allegedly from a child, but it's not. As you can see the watermarks on the paper and on the envelope. That's a dead giveaway. Next. Here's another really disturbing trend that we're seeing. Bug sprays. They are spraying bug spray on the paper, and they're smoking that as well. Your inmates will roll paper up, put it in the cracks of their door and around the door jambs so that when the bug man comes to spray, which most institutions spray once a month, when they come in to spray for regular bugs, it gets contaminated and they smoke it. They're also spraying this on metal grids, like a metal wire like you'd see on a grill, and they are electrifying it with batteries, and it melts down the nerve agent that's inside of this stuff, makes like a powder, like a crystal. They knock it off, and they smoke that or sell that as well. We have trained our dogs to find this. It is an odor that can be found, but it's highly toxic and highly dangerous. I recommend that if you're going to do that, try to train your canine staff on these particular products. Make sure you have a very good trainer who knows how to keep the dogs and the handlers safe. Next. We are getting more cell phones that are coming in the size of the one on the right. These cell phones are tiny. They're easily concealable. Also, the watches, we're seeing them come in too. Our dogs are trained and can detect and find these products. We're getting more and more of the miniature cell phones. It's definitely a trend that you should be looking for. Next. Our K9s find it all. This contraband was found by a dog in the exercise yard. It's just the ability for the dogs to find these items is it's unmatched in any other venue. Next. So this is what we call a tape turd. This was a K2 in there. It basically shaped this way so that an inmate or a visitor or somebody could insert it in their rectum or their vagina. This is how it's introduced into the system. A lot of times these are lubed up or put into a condom. Dogs do detect these, and they detect them all the time. This is one of the trends that we're seeing as well. Next. So we do a lot of canine checks. We do random roll calls, whatever you call it when your staff is briefed and before they start work. The roll calls we do, the metal detectors, the parking patrols, the checkpoints, staff break rooms and lockers. We've had success in all those areas. But there's nothing that keeps your staff on their toes more than a dog coming through to do people scans right before they go to work. Once the word gets out that you're doing these, your contraband introduction by staff will drop overnight. Next. We check all staff, correctional officers, administrators, including sheriffs and wardens, nurses, teachers, shop foremen, clergy coming in. Yes, we have had a lot of fines on clergy, unfortunately. Volunteers, basically everyone coming in gets scanned. And it's really important that our administrators, sheriffs, and wardens set the tone by sitting down and allowing the dog to scan them as part of the process. Leadership comes from the top. Next. This was recovered from the inside of an officer. As you can see, there's 3 cell phones. Every one of the smaller ones was a charger. Charges in phones, charging units for the phones are premium inside of an institution, along with lighters and things like that. Things that you would take for granted. Our dogs did detect this, and we did recover it. Next. This is another one, that a trend that we see all the time is visitors inserting it in their vagina or their rectum. These color-coded balloons, the two orange ones were marijuana. The white one was heroin. This is so they can break it up, get it out as quickly as possible without having to open the contraband any place where they can be detected. Next. Drones. We're seeing more and more drones, folks. In Maryland, we cannot shoot them down. We cannot knock them down. We can't actually alter their flight path in any way, shape, or form due to safety issues. That's from the FAA. So we have to track them, find them, and then when the drop is made, we can arrest the pilots, which we do find near the prisons. And here's a trend that you're going to see. More and more of these bad guys are not flying the drones. They're hiring drone pilots to do it. There's a specialty out there where these drone pilots are very good at what they do. Sometimes they will crash the drone deliberately to get the contraband in rather than try to drop it. The drones, you can buy a decent drone for just a couple $100 at Walmart. So they're willing to take that risk to get this kind of contraband in. As you can see on the upper left-hand side, those are street knives. I showed you the picture earlier of the gentleman that got carved up his back with a street knife. You imagine the damage they do with these when they can do the damage they already do with a homemade shank. So getting this contraband in these off these drones is highly important. Next. Patrol dogs, let's talk about it. This is the gorilla in the room, right? Many administrators have a problem with patrol dogs because of the optics of a dog biting another human being. And I get it. That's not a good optic sometimes, but there is no substitute. There is room at the table for the biters. This is a Belgian Malinois that we got, by the way, from a police department who decided the dog was too hard for the street, but would be perfect for corrections. And they were right. We got a handler for him. This dog has put down more insurrections and more issues. And I will tell you this. In the state of Maryland, we've had 1 dog bite on an inmate in the last 15 years. Dogs doesn't need to bite people. It just needs to be there. Inmates, they will fight a baton. They will fight mace. They will fight handcuffs. They will fight almost anything. But they do not want to fight a dog because it's a primordial thing in all human beings that we don't want to get eaten alive. It goes all the way back to the cavemen. When these dogs come on the tier, clacking away with those teeth, peace comes to your institution. Your officers go home safe, and even the inmates aren't harmed and usually lock in voluntarily. So patrol dogs should have a place at the table. Next. They're like tanks. They come in to support the infantry. I'm going to tell you right now, when I was a correctional officer on the tiers before I got K9, there was no sight better during a 1013, an emergency situation involving an officer, than a K9 handler and a patrol dog running on that tier. Nothing puts those inmates away from you and makes the correctional officers safer than that tank coming on the floor. Next. We don't do cell extractions, and neither should you. If you're at an institution where they still allow cell extractions with K9, I highly recommend you stop right now. There is case law that supports not putting the dogs in the cells, and again, it's dangerous for the dog. You have no idea what kind of weapons that person has. Usually when the dog goes into a cell, he's on a leash, which impedes his ability to defend himself. It's not a good idea. We don't do cell extractions with the dog. We allow our CRT, our SOG, our specialized units to do the cell extraction. We stand by on the tier to provide support in case he fights through that team. And it has happened, but when they see the dog, they usually give it up right away. It's part of the psychological deterrent of having a patrol dog. This dog wanted to see what was inside that slider. Thought it was a cute picture. Next. They're a force multiplier. This is a real CRT issue. The inmates on the left were on a van. They happened to be going by our institution with or this area where this training was going on. The guys in the green on the left are our special operations group. They work hand in hand with our canine handlers, who is what's called a CRT or canine response team member, and they just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. This was a hit on a transportation van. The officer pulled over, and SOG and the canine took care of the problem and saved the inmate's life. Next. So if it gets really, really bad, we bring in the big guns, and here they are. No, we're just kidding. We don't use Yorkies. But we remember earlier I told you we do a lot of publicity. This was at a canine show. My guys happened to grab the Yorkies and take this picture. By the way, this picture is framed and on the governor of Maryland's wall. He loved it so much. So when the governor looks at this picture, he's much less likely to cut the funding for K9 when he looks at those Yorkies every single day. Next. So how do I start or grow a canine program? We sell it. It's a force multiplier. It sells itself, guys. Canine is the difference maker. The biggest, most financially secure difference you can make in an institution for safety, and the effects are immediate. Provide a plan. If there is a plan for canine, it's how to build it, how to train how to get the equipment, how to get the officers in the field and the most effective. That plan has to make sense, and it should be vetted through senior and well-experienced trainers and canine handlers who know how this system works. Reduce costs. We already talked about it. There are lots of organizations out there that support dogs. They'll provide free vests, free leashes, free training, and they'll also take care of donating dogs to you. That's another way to reduce costs. And you can get help. Guys like me exist all over the state of Maryland. I've been doing this for 42 years. There's not a whole lot of questions I haven't been asked that I've been able to find an answer for. You can call me, you can text me, you can email me, and I will give you my best guess. There's also lots of trainers out there like Jeremy and others who have been through the correctional system. They know what works and what doesn't. And get that advice, get that help, and you can either start, grow, or make your canine program even more effective. So is it worth it? Ask it. I always tell people this, and I'm not trying to brag, but this is what our unit has been able to do in just 1 year. In FY25, our canine unit responded to 223 requests for service. These requests for service come in from wardens, security chiefs, shift supervisors, intel, detectives, you name it. We honor them. We've honored every single request for service that we have received in FY25. And the range of requests is from detector dogs to patrol dogs to standby security with our guys, and we honored all of them. And they all had a huge effect. Next. I'm a numbers guy, so let me give you some numbers. In 2024, which is last year, we recorded 1,811 CDS fines. That's only controlled dangerous substances. Heroin, cocaine, you name it, we found it. 35% of those fines resulted in actual arrests or criminal charges on inmates, visitors, or staff. That is an immediate effect. We had 330 other contraband fines. I'm talking things like alcohol and tobacco. And because inmates hide their weapons with the contraband, we were also able to recover 344 weapons, many of them street knives. We also recovered 6 firearms in and around our facilities, 22 stun guns, and 122 knives. It's amazing what you can recover when you have a good canine program. We also got 184 cell phones, SIM cards, and thumb drives. And we made personally, K9 unit affected 24 arrests. We've had almost 200 arrests in only the last 6 years. So ask yourself, is it worth it? It's worth every single dime that you invest in your canine program. So we talked about canine, why it's the best investment in safety. We talked about why we do what we do. We've talked about the violence and crime that's associated with contraband and how we can cure that by getting it out of our system. Canine's your biggest asset to do that. We talked about the value of single purpose, or what we call floppy-eared dogs. You know, your little Springer Spaniels and Labs. We talked about signage and implied consent, CDS and contraband trends, trafficking trends, the use of patrol dogs, which is still, patrol dogs should have a place at the table, and starting, expanding, or growing your canine program. So, questions. If you have questions, you can certainly ask me. You can ask through Jeremy, but you can hit me up. Next slide, please. This is me. This is my name, Major Mark Flynn. I work for the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services K9 Unit. I'm the commander. That's my phone number. This is my cell phone. I'm sorry. That is my email. Please feel free to write me. I will try to help in any way I can. Excuse me. K9 is a small community. Corrections is an even tighter community. We have to help each other. My unit helps out, and I told you earlier, we train other correctional officers for free. They come up to us, we put them through a canine school. We are not the only ones in the country that do this. There are other departments that also train allied agencies when they have an opening for canine. You can save yourself a lot of money. We do this because we are brother officers. We are correctional officers first. We are special police officers second. We're canine handlers third. So we really believe in supporting our community. I'll support anybody who writes me, calls me, or texts me. I'll give you the best answer I can with 42 years of experience. I could be right, could be wrong. After 42 years, I'm usually right. So give me a call. If you can't get a hold of me, hit the next slide. Then I'm probably with my family on a cruise ship. Yes, we clean up very good. That's my family. We go out on cruises all the time. But I guarantee you, they're not usually more than 7 to 10 days. I'll be back to you, and I'll get back to you pretty quick.
All right. Well, thank you for donating your time. Honestly, when I sat through your class, I guess it was probably 2 years ago, first time I saw your class, it was the most in-depth class I have seen, especially as it pertains to why canines should be utilized for corrections. And when you go to conferences, very rarely do you see something that focuses on the correction side of things. So obviously right away I had to jump in the class because, I spent 20 years working in the field of corrections. And I feel like if an administrator has any kind of questions or concerns, or if they're on the fence, this puts everything to rest. I mean, the old saying, the proof is in the pudding. You can't argue your numbers. Your numbers are outstanding. I mean, they're truly impressive what you guys are doing.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. And I appreciate what you're saying, because I was like you. I went to a lot of canine conferences and I saw almost nothing for our correctional officers. And being a CO myself, I realized right away that is a unaddressed need that we need to meet. So, I do teach at these canine conferences around the country, and I enjoy doing it. I do it on my own dime because I really believe that education is the best way to make our institutions safer and allow our staff to go home to their family each and every night like they're supposed to.
Absolutely. And once again, I want to thank you for just taking your time out tonight and talking to us. We are going to post this on our YouTube channel, it has a nice balance of professional detection handlers as well as some sport, handlers. But I have, over the past several years, I get at least a dozen calls a month sometimes. Sometimes it's, just dozen calls a year. But I get a lot of calls for agencies wanting to start They don't know where to start. They don't know how to sell it. And, oftentimes corrections seems to be the most underfunded agency out there. Or they have to start with donated dogs, and then they have to sell the value to their higher up. So sitting here and going through this as thorough as you are, this answers all the questions. You could take this video right to your fiscal court. You could take it to your major, your jailer, your sheriff, your warden, and sit down and answer any and all questions that they may have. So thank you for taking the time and sitting down and talking to us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Hopefully we will see you in Vegas in March, and we'll have to go out and grab something good to eat. Okay.
There's lots of places out there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, man. I'll holler at you soon.
My pleasure, Jeremy. Thank you.